Hello, everyone, and welcome to this IOCDF Faith and OCD Roundtable discussion. We are so excited to have everyone here as we talk about faith and OCD and the ways that these things can come together in really beautiful ways. We have some amazing panelists here who are going to be sharing their personal experience, their expertise, and just all of their heart around this topic with us. And we're going to start off in just a second as I introduce them by diving into this idea of how we might understand OCD within faith communities, or how faith communities understand OCD. I'm going to go to Rebecca first and just want to introduce that Rebecca Dew is a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She has 7 children and 1 granddaughter and enjoys running, cooking, sewing, and playing the guitar. She has struggled with OCD since adolescence, but through counseling, she has acquired the coping skills to live an abundant life despite OCD. So it's just so glad that you're with us and that you are so brave in being willing to share your experience and your story. And would love to just start by asking you, how do you think we understand OCD within faith communities, or how maybe should we understand OCD within faith communities? However this question speaks to you.
Yeah. When Annabella sent me that question, and I thought, I'm not sure that as a community we really have much understanding of OCD at all. I think it's really interesting because I feel like I meet people who describe situations they're in, and I think, oh, you sound like you're struggling with OCD like I am, but when I tell people that I have OCD, a lot of times they seem surprised, or they think that it's just a matter of like perfectionism, or I like things to be straight and organized and neat, or that certain things bug me, or I'm scared of germs, and they don't really understand what it is that I'm dealing with. They just think OCD, and they think people just want to be organized, or they're afraid of germs. And so I just really haven't encountered in my interaction with people in the church a lot of understanding of OCD.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rebecca. And I'm so glad that you're highlighting this for us. And it's why I was kind of reframing the question, because I've had this experience often too, as someone navigating OCD, where there's so many things I want people to understand that maybe they don't always understand. And this is exactly why we're having these really important conversations today. So I would love to go over to Nathan and to introduce Nathan. Nathan Gibbons is a former bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He served for nearly 5 years in this non-paid assignment and very much enjoyed his time working to keep the faith strong within members of his congregation. By profession, he is a licensed clinical social worker and works for the church's Family Services Department. Nathan has spent many years working in both ecclesiastical and professional settings with missionaries of the church. He is the father of 5 children and 3 grandchildren. And it sounds like Nathan is doing this interdisciplinary work that we're talking about each and every day. So I'd love to hear from you. How do we understand OCD within faith communities? Or maybe how could we understand OCD better within faith communities?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've noticed my internet is jumpy, so I'm going to answer this. You tell me if I need to go off video to preserve the bandwidth. But no, I would say I appreciate what Rebecca said, and I would agree with it. And I'll speak both from my experience as a bishop. In that experience, there's generally 8 or 9 or 10 bishops that tend to work together in the same kind of congregation area, and they'll work on whatever topics or issues that come up. And I found most bishops, after a little bit working with their members, they learn about how OCD is different than perfectionism, but they don't come into it naturally, for sure. And I don't think the community, as by and large, the community in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints tends to be high driven, high performance, hard pushing, good people. And so perfectionism and OCD can get confused pretty easily. In my job with family services, we work with bishops all over, all over in the state, or whether if it's with bishops all over the country, all over the world. And I would say that there's a high emphasis on trying to have bishops communicate and consult with either the missionary department or with family services, with the ones I'm employed with, because we know that it's not going to come natural to them. Although I would say this, I've been employed 27 years with family services, and it is light years better now than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, with the amount, of information that bishops tend to have.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you're in the role that you're currently in, especially as a former bishop, to be able to bring light and offer education to others and to really bridge this gap. I just think it's such significant work, and exactly the work that we're talking about today. And I know that Annabella brought you into this conversation with us. So just to bring Annabella in as well, would love to introduce Annabella Hagen, LCSW, who is the clinical director and founder of Mindset Family Therapy. Her experience with one of her son's challenges with OCD and their search for a provider who truly understood and knew how to treat OCD motivated her to specialize in treating OCD herself. She loves to see her clients progress as they fully engage in their treatment and experience the journey back to living a value-centered life. And I have to add on there that she is the author of Imperfectly Good, which is one of my favorite books on OCD, ACT, faith, and scrupulosity. And was leading a support group last night, and that was the first resource I kept pushing everyone to, because I think it's so meaningful. You're just doing great work. So Annabella, would love to hear from you. How do we understand OCD within the faith community, or maybe how could we?
Thank you, Katie. Obviously, I see the other side, meaning all I see is clients with OCD and scrupulosity. But I agree with Nathan and Rebecca. This is being gradual. It's getting better. It's improving. And one of the things that I really love is that our top leaders in the church, such as Elder Holland and President Nelson, have addressed two big topics, which is perfectionism, and of course, in the context of the commandment, right, the greatest commandment: be ye therefore perfect. And I think that that's where a lot of people still don't know the difference between perfectionism and OCD. But the other day, I actually was listening to a podcast, and the person is a professor at BYU, and he used the word scrupulosity. It was a few months ago, and he also used the spiritual perfectionism. And I really love that term, because most people, even therapists, still around this area, when I tell them I treat scrupulosity, they'll go, "Scrup what?" They've never heard the word. So I actually like the spiritual perfectionism term, because then it makes sense. And that's the reason why, Imperfectly Good is there, because and I usually say, my thinking is getting so much better, but it can get better. And a lot of the times I believe, because I see 18-year-olds, young people going on missions or coming back early because of scrupulosity, OCD, or college kids, it seems like they miss the memo. In the olden days, we used to say somebody missed the memo, or in here, where somebody missed the text. These young people have missed these amazing talks. They don't hear about them, and they don't listen to the podcast that I listen to. So I still see young people misunderstanding scriptures, verses that most of us will see as, oh yeah, I need to do good, I need to do better, etc. But don't get obsessed and hard on ourselves. But these young people misunderstand it and take the verses literally. So they don't realize it's scrupulosity, OCD, and that's where the miscommunication happens.
Thank you so much, Annabella. Thank you. I want to go back to Rebecca for our next question. And Specifically going back to your lived experience, as we think of your experience as someone with OCD and moving through this process and someone of faith, I'm wondering what was helpful for you or what would have been helpful for you. What would you say is necessary as we offer support that can honor someone's faith and their mental health, both of these things together?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I struggled with OCD for a really long time before I even knew what it was or tried to get help for it. And it started when I was a teenager, and I had so much guilt for things that I had done when I was a kid, and I just carried it with me forever. And I was so afraid that if I talked to a bishop, that he would agree with me that I was an awful person and that I needed to be kicked out of the church, or, I was so afraid of the consequences that I just wouldn't talk to anybody. I was so scared. And I don't know, when I had a few times that I did go to a bishop. So once when I was a kid, and he was just like, you don't need to worry about this. Just go on with your life, But I still carried the guilt, and I kept analyzing, what could I have done differently? What I must have not explained it well enough. He just didn't understand how horrible I am, And so I carried it with me into my 20s, and then I went to a bishop, and luckily he recognized that we weren't talking about a spiritual problem. We were talking about an emotional problem. And he directed me to go find a counselor, and I did, and I saw a counselor a couple of times, and it helped a lot. But it wasn't Annabella. It wasn't, it didn't really help me as much as I needed. And so then I went on another 15 years off and on, just carrying these burdens with me. And then I went to another bishop because I just became overwhelmed again and was so scared to talk to him for all the same reasons that I'd been carrying for 30 years. And once again, he recognized, okay, like, she needs some help. So I think there's definitely a lot of bishops out there who do recognize, or who have this gift of discernment, or have had life experiences that show them, okay, this person is having a mental and emotional issue that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. And I need to send them to someone who has expertise in that. And so that started my journey. And, he encouraged me to go get some emotional help. And I was noticing things happening in my children, the same kind of OCD things. And we, through a journey of meeting with psychiatrists, and I asked them to find me someone who could help us specifically with scrupulosity OCD. And they referred me to Annabella, and she was just a miracle for our family. And so I think that's just the key is having the bishops somehow be able to recognize, okay, this is a mental and emotional issue, and we need to get them to an expert. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not sure, especially in our church where the ministers are lay ministers. And so there's a lot of turnover. You're only in there for 5 years or so. So you're just constantly retraining the new guy to recognize things. So it's hard. But I also feel like in our church, there's so much going on education-wise where they're trying to get the information out, and they're trying to speak in general conference, like, if you're having these emotional problems, it's not because you're unworthy. It's not because you're a bad person. Like, get some help. You need help. And it's okay to take medication, and it's okay to talk to a counselor. So I'm sorry I'm going on, but I also feel like once I had help from Annabella, I finally had hope that I hadn't had for like 30 years. And so then I felt like I wanted to share it with everybody. And so my Relief Society would, like, when we talked about emotional issues, they would assign me to teach the class, and when I would notice people struggling, then I would talk to them and try to refer them, tell them about the experiences that I had. And right now I have a son who's on a mission, and he's struggling with OCD. And so I get out Annabella's book every week. and I send him something from her book. Because I think when you have something that helps you, you just want to share it with everybody else. So.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and for sharing your journey and also highlighting challenges where it's so difficult, I think, across the board, maybe when OCD isn't initially understood. And I'm so glad that you have been connected with Annabella and that you have this amazing support. And now that you're in a space to be able to share that with others. And I would love to continue and go to Nathan. And I think he can also speak to this. This is something that is very different for me in ministry, of having lay ministers. I can only imagine the challenge that can pose with understanding OCD and with folks getting trained and what that means and looks like. And I love everything that the community is doing to put out information and education, but would love for you to speak to how can we offer support that honors both faith and mental health. And I would also love to hear, even for the IOCDF and for organizations, how can we help to share information in a way that's helpful for folks both on the faith and the mental health side within the community?
That's a great question. First of all, my heart goes out to you, Rebecca, for the number of years that you had to suffer with this without knowing that there, was help right there. And it's such a tricky area for people of faith. I just can't underline it. It is, and it's different than other mental health disorders. It's really different. And so my heart goes out to you. But as you were talking, it struck me that the church does have a handbook of instructions. That's what it's called. And that's written for every church leader. And it used to be private. It used to just be available for church leaders. But that handbook's been published and it's available for everybody. The good news with that, I think part of the reason they chose to publish it is so that members, there's transparency here. And in that handbook, it's clear that leaders should counsel in their spiritual counseling. They should also include mental health professionals or medical professionals when that's necessary. In other words, it's clear from the leaders of this church that they highly they put a lot of focus on trying to get both mental health counseling and faith-based counseling. They should go hand in hand. And with this issue, that's definitely the case. I remember a young person who came to me preparing for a mission. So this was a person probably 16 or 17. And this young person had come into my office as a bishop on multiple occasions, the closer that she got to her mission. And she was wanting to talk through things that she thought were sins. But the mental health professional inside me knew it's probably not, I wonder if we're dealing with something else. So, I was trained well and trained. I need to refer to a mental health professional. It wasn't going to be me, but I was inspired to say something to her. I said, after she was meeting with a mental health professional, I said, is it important to you that I'm recommending to you that the problems you're having have way more to do with your mind than your heart? And she stopped and she's like, oh, I'd never even considered that. In her heart, she was feeling, she has faith and she wants to be good. And, that desire, it's all good. She was trying to change heart problems that weren't heart problems. And it finally made sense to her. Right. I need to go to a doctor to talk about my brain. That's what I need to do. It's my brain that's a little bit at fault. She ended up serving a beautiful mission. She got the help she needed. And I just was so grateful for that inspiration, that thought. Becky, you referred to talks by leaders. There are all kinds of good stuff, good information that's coming out, hopefully gets to more and more people. Every time you speak at a Relief Society function or, or some function where people can hear your story and can understand it, it's going to help a bunch of people in that room.
Yeah.
There are far more that suffer with it than we know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it does. I think it makes such a difference when we're having these conversations. And I do, as we think about what Rebecca was talking about, resonate so deeply as someone with OCD to this, am I good? And I love, Nathan, what you were talking about this not being a heart problem, as we often feel that it is when we're going through this journey, it really being something that's going on from an anxiety and from a brain perspective. And I think for so long, folks with OCD try to figure out, well, how can I be quote unquote good, or how can I be perfect? How can I be better? And that's not the issue to begin with. So I think just in your role to be able to share that with the individual that you did, and I'm sure with so many others, it makes a difference. And Annabella, I know you get to do that through your lens as a clinician as well. So I would ask you through that lens, how can we offer support that honors both faith and mental health?
Yeah, the main thing I want to say is what drives me is the pain that I hear every day, every week from these young people, believing that they are not good enough to or to go and serve a mission because of a memory that they had, that they think they did something wrong and they didn't, but they think. And then I've had some that ask to come back from their mission back home because they don't believe they're worthy to serve a mission. So I just want to say I feel the pain, and I am so grateful that the IOCDF is doing these things to spread the word. And one of the things I will say, and I tell my clients, is to be able to share their experiences, because at the end of the day, I have had some clients that are professionals, businessmen, and people that are doing well in life, except the brain is there, right? And I always tell them, it would be nice if you could share your challenges, because then people will understand it's not a weird thing. OCD is not weird. You are not weird because of your OCD. So and I know I say that, and some do and some don't, but I would say that's probably where we can start as spreading the word and helping, getting more support. Mainly a sufferer that talks to their bishop and gives them the education, knowing that they're there 5 years. Yeah, we need to keep doing that. But the person that struggles with OCD, they don't have to explain OCD. They can just give a reference to the IOCDF. I always tell them, you don't need to say anything. Just give them the link, and they can educate themselves at their own pace, at their own time, so that they can be educated, and you are not put in a place of trying to educate, but just ask them to do that. The other part is educating their loved ones, because in my experience, I have seen couples where one of them struggles with OCD, and so they keep saying, I am not worthy, and I don't want to take the sacrament, and things like that. And so the spouse thinks, well, we're going to leave the church because this is what's happening because of our faith, and we are going to just leave the church because of what's happening to you. And I said, no, invite your spouse to come, and so that I can explain what OCD is, because again, there is that misunderstanding that because OCD is targeting your faith and your religion, then is egosyntonic and ego-dystonic. OCD is ego-dystonic, but then within the faith, we are trying to be better people. We want to obey the commandments, etc. But when somebody has OCD, I would say it's like you have a magnifying glass and everything is larger, and then you see all or nothing, etc. So I say to my clients please educate your family so that they can understand this is OCD and not a faith problem.
Thank you. I love pulling the family in. And I want to quote you there and have everyone hear that OCD is not a faith problem to share with families and with faith leaders and with individuals. And I just, such a beautiful thing, and really leads us into our final question of this roundtable, which is, well, how can individuals with OCD, clinicians and faith leaders, how can they work together? How can they support one another in raising awareness for OCD and also destigmatizing OCD? And I think both of those things are so important. And Rebecca, through your lens and through your lived experience and with your faith, what do you think would be helpful for that?
Sorry. That's a hard question. But I think sharing what you know and what you've experienced. Like I said, I have a son on a mission right now who is just really struggling with the scrupulosity OCD, and his mission president doesn't really know much of anything about OCD. And so we had a three-way conference call like this with our stake president and with the mission president and also with Caleb. We all got on the phone and talked about his situation and what we needed to do and whether he needed to come home. And we talked about medication and we talked about counselors. And so I think it's always important just to be open, to talk to everyone involved. And like I love what Annabella said about, educating, here's a link, please read about this. But I've also, it's been hard because I wanted to get my son hooked up with counseling with Annabella because I know she's so good. And they have mission policies. No, we're going to go through this counselor. And so it's kind of hard sometimes when you're dealing with policies versus what you think is the ideal situation. So yeah, I mean, there are roadblocks to working this out. But yeah, I do think it's important to let people know, because not everyone understands your situation. So explain it the best you can, and then offer, here's a great counselor, refer, contact this person or read this, or just share your own story. This is what happened to me and this is how I found hope. And I know when I've shared that in Relief Society, people have called me and said, what was that phone number? Who do I need to call? And Annabella does such great work. She does a online support group that people can just join and talk about what they're going through and support each other that way.
Thank you. She does such a wonderful job with that. And Rebecca, you're doing a wonderful job in sharing. And I think just in being brave to share and even to highlight roadblocks that we've experienced, it's how we get to navigate those roadblocks together in community and make sure that folks can get support and also continue to live into and engage in their religious and spiritual traditions. So would love to pass this to Nathan as well to talk about how individuals with OCD, clinicians, and faith leaders can support one another as they raise awareness for OCD, as they destigmatize OCD, as they help folks get treatment.
Yeah, I think for any bishop or any church leader, if he'll have, first of all, it's referring a member of the faith community to a competent provider, somebody he trusts, somebody like Annabella, somebody who's aware of the real treatment and not just soft counseling is what I would call it. But after the referral, I think every bishop ought to expect or hope that that the clinician is going to get a release and then work with the bishop, back with the bishop again, to try to help the bishop in an understanding of what OCD is and what it isn't, and what can help with this process in healing, what won't help. I was really grateful when I had therapists that would call me back and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. And, of course, it all had to be done legally because it's counseling, it's professional counseling. But as a leader, I just really valued a clinician speaking with me and opening up about, what could be done. So in the Family Services Organization, the church's counseling organization requires that if a person is going to be referred to counseling and it's paid for by the church, that the clinician will get a release so that they can work back again with the bishop to try to help the bishop understand.
Thank you for that. And I think that's it's so important. And again, for folks who are listening here, to be able to see that collaboration is possible and can happen and can be encouraged with a release for mental health professionals to work with the bishop, to work with the faith leaders, and that those things can work together. Annabella, would love to hear you continue this conversation with how individuals with OCD, clinicians, and faith leaders can support one another in raising awareness and destigmatizing OCD. And would love for you also to share a fantastic resource that you have worked so hard to create that I know folks would love to hear about.
Yeah, I think that my only thoughts are we just need to keep talking about it, keep talking and sharing and doing things like this. Maybe Nathan, you can do firesides and share. I mean, it's like there's still so much to do, and I feel personally that I am a little tied up because I am a clinician, and I'm so grateful that Nathan is here because I know that he has more connections and to educate people, LDS families, family services, and go up the ladder. And again, this is just a thought. With my faith leader's guide to scrupulosity, I actually printed it because I took it to Corey Larson at Family Services. I said, just share with people, and I have it online and it's free. Anybody can download it, but again, it's my passion, my desire for faith leaders to understand it, and this might be something that they can have to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, how do I know that this is OCD or maybe that is scrupulosity, and what to do once they get into mental health, when they go to treatment, how can a faith leader continue to support the person? So I have just some little tips. It's short because again, faith leaders are busy, but I'm just thinking this could be a great source because again, this idea of the most important people right now that we're trying to educate are faith leaders, and that can be a resource for them.
Thank you, Annabella, and thank you for working so hard on such a fantastic resource that I get very excited to share with folks. And just thank you everyone for being here today. And I would love to just go around as we close what is hopefully the first of many more in-depth conversations on this topic. But I would just love to give everyone an opportunity to share just a closing few words of hope. And that could be for faith leaders, that could be for individuals with OCD, that could be for clinicians, for the community as a whole. But in the context of faith and OCD, just any words of hope that you feel compelled to offer today. So I'll go to you first, Rebecca.
Wow. I have hope because I've been able to find these resources, to talk with Annabella and to learn the coping skills so that when I get bombarded, I can tell myself, okay, I know this is OCD. I know this is going to pass, and I know the steps to accept it and allow it to be there and move on with my life. And so I think my message is I've been there. I know the pain that you're feeling right now, and there is a way out of it. there is a way to learn how to manage it and to live a happy life.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. And then I'll go to Nathan, who I'm trying to re-unmute here, and it's not letting me. Maybe it'll let you on your end. Nathan, I would love to have some. There we go. So,
yeah,
there we go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'd love some closing words of hope from you also.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. And as a faith leader, just as a person of faith, I believe that God would take away a problem if he thought that was the best thing to do. I've seen him work miracles in my life. And yet with this particular issue, he's chosen to not take it away from a lot of people. And so what I have left to believe is that it's there to improve us, to have us learn, something in it for us to develop and grow from. And if part of that development is a closer connection with him, then that makes sense to me. So I just, I've never met, as a clinician, never met with somebody who had scrupulosity, who was lazy. Not one time. It's always somebody who is really detail oriented. They care deeply. Those are all great, great things. So this isn't about, changing something completely. The reason there's a lot of hope is because this is figuring out how to think through this, how to process through it. And there's all kinds of hope. I've probably seen more progress, just as a bishop, I saw more progress, certainly as a clinician, with this issue, as long as somebody remains close to their faith and gets help, than most other issues. Lots of progress. Because why? Because these good people are still trying. They're gonna keep after it, and that's a great thing. So yeah, there's a lot of reason to be hopeful, and we got to keep talking about it.
Absolutely. There are so many reasons to be hopeful and to continue to connect with God and with our faith as we engage in treatment, and to know that it is possible. I tell people each and every day to actually get closer to God on this journey that we're going on with treatment. And there are some really beautiful things that can take place with that, as hard as the journey can be. So Annabella, I would love, you always have such beautiful words of hope as well. Any words of hope you'd like to offer for the community?
Yeah, I think that adding to what Nathan said is, use your faith and be able to, and trust God. Not necessarily that God will take this away from you, but that will give you the strength that you need to understand the skills, to have the energy to do the exposures or whatever you need to do. Because again, God is there. We need to remember, how can I use my faith and keep going. Just keep going. Don't give up, because again, I've seen the reason I love doing what I do is because I actually see success. And those that are not successful are certainly those that are not able to keep going. So my advice of hope is, don't give up, keep going, and keep holding on to your faith, because that will help you greatly.
Thank you, Annabella. And Rebecca, go ahead.
Yeah, just listening to Nathan saying that, there's a purpose in your suffering. And he said maybe it's getting closer to God. I think it definitely can be that. But I think also God puts us here to lift other people, to make connections, and to bring everybody closer to him. And one of my biggest motivations in learning to cope with my OCD was seeing my children suffer with it. I needed to know how to deal with it so that I could help them deal with it. And then I see it in my neighbors and my friends. And so I just want to help everybody. And so I think if you can look at it from that perspective, like, I need to learn how to overcome this, because I need to help my neighbor overcome it too. And I need to help my children and my grandchildren, because there's so many people that need help.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think that's such a beautiful place for us to close, that as challenging as OCD can be, there is this beautiful opportunity to turn pain into purpose, or our mess into our message, or struggle into strength, as we support those around us and as we use these gifts that God has given us. And I think, I always look back at my own OCD journey and the struggles of that, and then also think about how just immensely grateful I am to be in the space that I am, to be able to help others who are on that journey. And everyone here in this space, speaking from a lived experience, a clinical, a faith perspective, is doing just that. So thank you all so much for being here as a part of this roundtable. Thank you to everyone watching. And if you are looking for resources, we would love to have you check out iocdf.org/faith and OCD, or come to an upcoming Faith and OCD conference. We are so incredibly thankful for you, and we hope that you feel hope from this group and each and every day.